national reputation on a platform, on a lecture platform, in days before the Civic War. So, with that being said, let us remember who we are and what we stand for. Remember, we've been created in the image of God and after his likeness. So God likes the color that he has created us to be. Young man, pull your pants up. Show some respect.
God has called all of us to do something. My call? To protest the separate but equal Plessy versus Ferguson, to not accept Jim Crow laws, to educate my people, and to throw off the yoke of oppression for black and white women alike. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Mary Church Terrell. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1863. That was the year of Emancipation Proclamation. My parents were former slaves, but understand this, we were middle class. Why, you say? Because my parents wanted me to get the best education that I could get. So they sent me away. I attended elementary school in Ohio. And in 1884, I received my Bachelor's of Arts from Oberlin College. 4 years later, 4, I received my Master's from Oberlin College in 1888. I began teaching in Washington, D.C. public schools. I love public schools. How many of you attended a public school? Amen. Well, see, back then, they were segregated. You know what that means? The blacks were on one side of town, the whites were on the other side of town. They had separate schools. They called them separate but equal, but no, they were not. I married the man of my dreams. In 1887, I met Robert Terrell. He was a teacher at the school. I said when I met him, I'd follow him in every classroom to learn all that he could teach. And in fact, he became a Washington, D.C. municipal court judge. Pretty good, huh? Well, I was very proud of him. And in 1895, I became the first black woman appointed to the Washington Board of Education. Well, I had to resign because That man of mine was so awesome that I voted for him to become a principal, and they didn't like that. They called it conflict of interest. But we know how that works for other people.
Amen.
But I wasn't going to let that deter me. In 1896, I became the first president of the newly established National Association of Colored Women, NACW. I have a good friend. You're going to hear from her later. Barnett Wells. She's a fighter as well. We fought together so much that in 1909, Ida B. Wells Barnett and I were the only two women of color to start the National Association of Colored People. You all know that as what? NAACP. Exactly. I was fluent in different languages, traveled around the world to give speeches on the condition of black women. But in my older years, I still believed in equal treatment of our schools and our restaurants and the businesses. The separate but equal laws were just all over. I would picket restaurants in Washington, D.C. In fact, I filed a lawsuit that went all the way to the Supreme Court against Thompson's. Thompson's told me that I could not eat there because I was African American, black, Negro, less than. Well, I showed them because my lawsuit is what opened up the doors to Brown versus Board of Education. I didn't play with those people. When I was 90 years young, I brought down desegregation in the restaurants in Washington, D.C.
Amen.
And other businesses as well. God is good, I tell you.
Yes, He is.
I died on July 24th, 1954, 2 months after Brown versus Board of Education. The separate but equal laws were deemed unconstitutional. I was like Anna in the book of Luke. I had to live to see that promise come true. I challenge each of you to stand up like I did. Do not be afraid of the courts. If you see that something is wrong, file a lawsuit and get justice in this country.
Amen.
Do not sit and wait for some lightning bolt to strike you. Get up and do what you are supposed to do. Stop making excuses and just do it. Thank you.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch.
A darky damsel obtains a verdict for damages against the Chesapeake, Ohio Railroad. What it cost to put a colored teacher in a smoking and carriage for $500. This headline is quoted from the Memphis Daily Appeal, December 1884. You see, the story goes like this. Ida B. Wells bought a first-class ticket on a local train, Memphis to Woodstock line, operated by the Chesapeake, Ohio and Southwestern Railroad Company. After she took a seat in the ladies' coach, she was asked by the conductor to move to the forward coach, a smoker reserved for people who smoked. Wells refused and was forced to leave the train. When she returned to Memphis, she filed a suit against the railroad company. In December 1887, The Memphis court ruled in her favor and awarded her $500 in damages.
Later, in 1895, I added Barnett. I was born in Holland Springs, Mississippi, as a slave, but only 6 months of slavery. Because 6 months later, I became emancipated and a free Negro at 6 months old. My parents too, I think we're probably low middle class, but my father and my parents were enough for me to send me away to college as well. I attended Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, a note about that is we know that Shaw is a historical black institution, the first of higher education in the South. I had to drop out of school 2 years later. My parents died of yellow fever. So my siblings and I, 7 of them, had to move to Memphis, Tennessee. We lived with an aunt that cared enough to bring us all into her household. I was fortunate to continue my education at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. And in 1884, as you know, from me commuting back and forth to teaching, I had to give up my seat, supposedly, for someone else in another car in the railroad. I refused. So you see, before Murray Church Terrell stood up, I refused to move and get up. Just as you know, before Rosa Parks sat down, I refused to get up and move out.
All right.
We had a common theme going. Women, we've always fought for justice. We all should realize sometimes you just simply get tired. You get tired of being tired. Amen. Enough to make a statement and pray that God's insistence for the best outcome. Because you see, what the story didn't tell, and maybe you don't know, the Supreme Court of Tennessee overturned that verdict. I didn't get one red penny, as we say, of that $500. I even had to pay the court costs. But again, in life, we have to learn to do what? Stand for something or fall for anything.
Amen.
It didn't stop me from writing, though. It didn't stop me from writing about the injustices of lynching, which I'm now known for throughout the world. I co-owned a press in Tennessee and still significantly spread the word about the injustices throughout America. And my writings even went abroad. I went abroad with the help of a dear friend that you may know, an activist, Frederick Douglass. I wrote once about a grocery store called the People's Grocery Store. We had grocery stores all in our lives growing up. This particular store was owned by blacks, Negroes at that time, and they began to be so prosperous that they took the customers away from the white store. Well, this made the white owners very angry. So they endeavored to take the store from these black persons that owned the store, and it ended up that one night they were guarding their store. The shooting happened, and couple of white people died. Of course, the black owners were thrown in jail then with the sheriff's office. But before they could even get a trial, a mob broke into the jail and took them out, and they all were lynched. After that story, and probably the same lynch mob destroyed my newspaper and openly threatened to lynch me if I came back to Memphis. Well, it doesn't take much to know I didn't visit Memphis again. In 1893, I published a red record that examined lynchings throughout America. Again, I traveled abroad, and I was not gonna be silenced. In 1895 is when I took my dash name for Barnett, one of the first women who kept their maiden names and to honor their husbands with their last names as well. The next year I formed with, you already have learned, with Mary Terrell, the National Association of Colored Women, and began my work in Chicago to increase the women's and fight for the women's suffrage and increase women's participation in politics. Women's suffrage march was the first march in DC, and 60 other women and myself, we went along for this march. We were advised when we got there by several of our white friends that we should walk in the back of the march because it might offend some of our white Southern delegates. Well, I know, you know my response as Mary Wells and Brenda Pelham. Either I go with you or not at all. I am not taking this stand because I personally wish for recognition. I am doing it for the future benefit of my whole race. This action received massive newspaper coverage and shed more light on the reality of Black participation in politics. And even after the 19th Amendment was adopted in 1920, I continued my travels and tried to embolden women to vote and participate in politics. So I lived a life for 68 years and 8 months. I lived trying to make a difference in the lives of my generation at that time and for you here today. One of the well-known quotes that I'm known for is, "One better die fighting against injustices than to die like a dog or a rat in a trap." And today, I marry Anna Wells and my friend Mary Terrell. I think we would want you to know some points of history that we fought